Hello, my name is Doug Baxter and I'm the Managing Partner at Agency Futures. Today, we're delighted to announce that two very senior and prominent figures in the marketing industry are joining Agency Futures as board advisors with immediate effect. So I'm delighted to introduce you to Jane Boardman, OBE, former CEO at M&C Saatchi Talk, and Oliver Bruce, founder and CEO of Pinpoint Media, a creative and media agency in London and Cheltenham. So Jane, let me start with you. Perhaps you can tell us why you've made this decision to join us at Agency Futures.
Because of you, Doug. No, Doug and I, as you know, Doug, we've worked together a long time ago, and we were in a very early iteration of an integrated agency, weren't we? And I just think that the respect that we both have for each other's disciplines and skill sets. So that's the kind of fundamental reason, because this is your organization. But when you and I started talking about this, my first thing was I'm not a financial expert. I've never worked in M&A directly. I'm an agency creative, if anything, CEO. But actually, I think the point that really swung me was Agency Futures' whole concept of empathetic M&A. And that really struck a chord. And what I realized is that the organization is, of course, we understand the financials, and of course, we can do that due diligence and understand the spreadsheets. But this is a lot less about spreadsheets than it is about really being a counselor to businesses. And that's what really resonated with me.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great point you make about the capacity to be a counselor to businesses. And with specific reference to the world of PR. So when you look at PR agency owners and your own experience, what kind of support is it that you think they really need?
Well, I think the first is help with the actual decision to sell, because running an agency isn't running a business. It's your whole life. It's your baby. It's your creation, and it's a very, very difficult decision to imagine that has life beyond you. But of course, if you're doing it well, it does.
Okay.
And then I think so the first thing is, am I ready to do this? Can it survive without me? And then the next drama that you have, that you lie awake at night worrying about, is what will I do afterwards? Will I have a job, and will I be able to do anything else? Because a lot of agency leaders have been running their agencies for a long time. So I think the most important thing, which is where the empathy comes in, is to really understand how we can help guide that decision making. Because, obviously they have reached a point where they're thinking about selling. But I think the thing that's really important is that they work with someone who can advise them on both the emotional and the practical side.
Right.
And I think that's something that I'm really looking forward to doing, because the two need to be equal. Okay.
So when you look at the world of PR at the moment, both in the UK and internationally, how are agencies doing right now?
I mean, I think that the funny thing about PR agencies is there is a whole range of what they do. And actually, there's very little flexibility of moving between them. So they all live in their independent universes, even though they have the overall title of PR agency. So, and I'm talking about that because there is a real difference in how agencies are performing depending on what sector they're in. And the classic, more, financially viable, usually, sectors are healthcare, corporate, crisis comms, digital. My background, although I have done corporate comms, is actually consumer, which is the most challenged. But consumer agencies are thriving where they embrace digital, and particularly the influencer universe. But generally, it's a very, very dynamic space at the moment, because everyone is realizing that reputation is absolutely crucial. And as a PR agency, a PR expert, communications expert, you are trained to really dig underneath the reputational challenges. And it's much more complex than being able to put a piece of paid advertising or any form of paid collateral out there, because we have to understand how it's going to be received, often by a third party, whether that's an influencer, whether it's a media. And I think that allows you to really get under the skin of that organization and properly understand it. And that's a skill that you can't learn overnight. So that skill, which is actually quite technical in lots of ways, is very much in demand in today's world.
So when PR agency owners are as you say, very conscious of building that reputation, very conscious of building their expertise, looking after their staff. Then they make this decision that they want to sell. When they look at the ideal acquirer, someone to guard their legacy into the future, what are they looking for from that organization?
I mean, I think, there are a number of reasons why you strategically sell. Obviously, in most cases, the big one is growth and to expand, because it's incredibly difficult to grow in the PR industry organically. And you need the funds to be part of something bigger. You need bigger resources all around you. The interesting thing as well about PR experts is that they tend to be, there's one PR expert. When you look at other areas, particularly in advertising, even in digital, there's creatives, there's strategists, whereas the PR person is all of those things. So it's therefore quite hard to grow organically because you're so busy doing all the bits of it. And actually the bigger agencies are able to have a creative department, even in PR. They're able to have a strategic team. They're able to have a production department. So there's an immediate benefit of being part of a larger organization from that perspective. Inevitably as well, most clients of any size and scale are looking for global understanding, global resonance in the campaigns. And quite often small independent agencies are based in one territory. And in my agency, I set up a network of like-minded agencies around the world that we could share ideas, but not everyone has that, and that isn't always as good as being part of an international group.
Well, that's an interesting point, because I think Agency Futures is pretty unique in that we are global. We always think we tend to put together these global partnerships. Yeah. From the agencies that you deal with, how interested are they or linking up somewhere? I mean, right at the moment, we're seeing a tremendous amount of expansion and growth focus from US agencies. Do you think that those owners are potentially looking to the US as a ideal partnership?
Definitely. I mean, I think there is always a joke certainly in the consumer PR world that, PR agencies go to New York to die. And there is it's like a graveyard for consumer PR agencies who sort of think we're brilliant in the UK, we can do the same in the States, because the media is not that different and it's not, the clients are pretty much the same. But actually, without that local market expertise, it is a disaster. And I think it has been proven that time and time again. Even the really big successful agencies don't make it work on their own. So it is definitely something people want to do. But it's very expensive. I mean, salaries in New York are twice, in some sectors, the price of the UK. It's a big investment. It's a completely different legal structure. The other thing actually is really important is when you're an independent agency, you've got a different attitude towards governance and governance structures. And being part of a big group will allow you to have the automatic legal right to work in America, to set your organization up. These things can bog down an agency leader completely. They take their eye off the ball, and then the very thing that they had to offer is disappeared because they're too busy focusing on whether or not they can get a trademark to operate in the States. So, I think there is multiple reasons why you would go with a group or a bigger company to expand internationally. Okay,
thanks. I want to go back to one thing you said, which is really in the core of our DNA and our vision, is this idea of empathetic M&A and how we can create deals that make both sides stronger as a result.
Yeah.
So given your own background, you've had a stellar career in UK and global PR, what do you think, what characteristics would you bring to help owners when they're looking to sell personally that you think are well suited to the idea of empathetic?
I think one of the things about all of us at Agency Futures is we've all made the mistakes. I certainly have. And I think that gives you a bit of wisdom. So you bring that. And also just understanding the marketplace. I just think it's such a complicated, on one level, it's very straightforward. You employ people, you get a contract, they do work. You don't have endless supply chains and, factories, manufacturing stuff, but it is equally very complicated. And the skill sets are very different and complicated as well. And the way you incentivize and manage people is very complicated. So I think if you know, coming from that background and totally understanding all those issues is absolutely crucial. And also, what I bring particularly is having been relatively independent and then not being relatively independent, that switch. And what I would really love to help people do is not just survive that, but love it. Because I do think there is, if you've run an agency independently, you should look at this moment as a massive learning experience and something that will give you another dimension to your career. Because you're suddenly learning about completely differently run companies, about corporate structures you're probably not aware of. You will be respected in different ways because you're suddenly bringing your level of expertise and your entrepreneurialism to probably a corporate board. So I think it's really relishing the experience rather than thinking, oh God, I've got 2 years to get myself out of here. Let's hope it's not too dreadful. You know, which I think a lot of people do. There's usually an earn-out period. They'll survive it and they'll be out. Actually relish that time. And you may end up staying because you may love it. You may find that there are certain elements of the leadership that you really are good at that you didn't quite realize. So I think the personal journey and the personal learning is something that I would like to encourage people to do along the way, as well as all the other stuff.
That's fantastic. I couldn't agree more. That sometimes agency owners look at that earnout almost as an horizon, but they don't perhaps embrace the opportunity that exists to reframe the future for themselves.
Absolutely. And I think they fight it sometimes. And, you know, one of the things that I think is really important, two things that don't get talked about very much in the M&A world for agencies, is the governance structures, which I mentioned earlier, which really is important because, you know, often there are completely different systems and processes that are much more rigorous in the company that's buying you. And often there is a lot of resistance from particularly junior staff in having to do timesheets, having to do reporting, having to do scopes of work. If the client says jump 3 times higher, that's absolutely fine, I can, but here's the scope of work for it. That is very uncomfortable to people that are used to going, sure. So, you know, bringing those and really looking at how you are going to resolve those challenges from both parties, actually, because it can be a make or break. The rigorous requirement for proper governance is a big shift. And then the second thing is the very small cultural shifts that are required. And I've done 2 mergers. The first one, I was, you know, thinking, all right, I need to tell the staff about the strategic benefit and the clients. And the first question, and then it debated quite a lot, was can we still have a kitchen and can we keep our mugs?
Oh my God.
It was brilliant. And the second time around, the key discussion point was about the staff meeting. Because one of the companies had them on a Monday, one had them a morning, the other had Thursday afternoon. And the resolution of that was the biggest subject of conversation for about 2 months. Because those things really matter. And I think it's very easy at a sort of very leadership level, board level, corporate level, to forget that these are people's lives and what they mostly care about is going into the office or not going into the office, because of course the whole working from home thing, all of that makes a huge more difference than whether or not they're suddenly owned by a massive company or an independent one. So you really have to be very conscious of those things and treat them with respect, and you know, build them into the process as well.
Fantastic. Ollie, just to turn to you, because we're talking about culture there, and you come from you've got a fascinating background where you started Pinpoint Media when you were still at university. And you've grown it now to be a leading content agency, which has also got a very strong performance and media side to things. So, you know, what is it you feel you're bringing, and why did you decide to join us here at Agency Futures?
Jane says it so well about that merger and acquisition integration from a cultural perspective, because having built the agency organically and then bought another agency into our business, we assumed, like you, that it was going to be, here's the clients, here's the, you know, the growth, so to speak. And it just isn't. So I think from my perspective, having run this organically, still being very much in the kind of business on the day-to-day, being able to offer that to other individuals that are going through that process is so crucial, because, you know, we've done some bits and bobs together. I think there is an element of understanding just how hard it is to integrate a business into another company. It's not a take cash off the table from day one. It's you will have to continue to invest time, to invest money, to invest your soul into what is essentially your baby, as Jane rightly pointed out. You have grown this from nothing. To put it into another company, they'll look at you in a way that maybe you haven't realised. They'll look at it as if you're bringing something new, fresh, exciting. They'll look at you to steer it in a way they might not have been able to do so. That is exciting, but you have to realise it's not just about jumping ship. You can't sell it just to make a quick quid.
Mm-hmm. And from your own experience of growing it from university and doing the startup and bootstrapping it, you know, in terms of being able to mentor other young agency owners, what do you feel are going to be the important parts of that to be able to offer them? What are they going to look to you as an advisor and a potential transaction advisor to provide them with?
I've been mentored by some amazing people, ex-big agency, you know, ex sort of scale-up agency that shifted into a bigger agency. So firsthand, I've had mentorship experience, but from the other end. So to be able to take that knowledge, implement it into my business, but now obviously guide and advise other people that are on that journey, I think is going to be hugely valuable for people that are going through the motions, because, you know, we've integrated a company, or we've bought an agency, we've tried to scale into South Africa, that didn't work. We've made a lot of mistakes, and I think understanding the mistakes we've made and compounding those and putting them into businesses so that they don't make those mistakes will be hugely valuable, because the saying is well known that there's no such thing as failure, it's only feedback. And I think if you can circumnavigate the failure by using the failings of other people, then that's only a good thing. And that really is what mentorship should be. It's showing people where to go, advising and guiding, allowing them maybe to make some mistakes, but showing them how not to.
Okay. And where the agent, because you seem to be within this really interesting ecosystem of young agency owners, what are the kind of themes that when people talk about ultimately getting that acquisition or being bought, what do you think they're looking for there?
In terms of, I guess, the ecosystem that we're part of, a lot of them, going back to the demographical piece, are Gen Z and millennials, and they're looking to grow, to scale, to exit, to start the next chapter, if that makes sense, to build something that has some kind of longevity, but to get the first deal away. And I think there's a lot to be said for getting a deal away, irrespective of what that looks like, because as Jane has rightly pointed out, you learn a lot on that process. Whether the deal goes ahead or it doesn't go ahead, the learnings that you make throughout that process are crucial. I think there's a lot of sexiness around entrepreneurship at the moment. There's a lot of people that are leaving businesses to go and start companies, be that in the D2C sector, be that in the FMCG, be that in agency land, whatever that might be. People are wanting to do something of their own accord. And agency is one of the paths of least resistance, because you don't have to have huge amounts of capital injected into the company to start it. You don't need to buy stock. So the circles that I'm involved in, there are people that are one-man bands, 5-man bands, 10-man bands that are doing good in terms of revenue, or well in terms of revenue, but they wanted to go it alone, and they're very happy with that. So you don't have to go and work for a big agency. You don't have to be a 20, 30 million pound business. You can start something from nothing in agency land, and you can grow it to be quite successful. That's what's really refreshing in that kind of world of entrepreneurship that I'm involved in. And really, you can make it your own. You don't have to be governed by anyone if you don't want to be. Jane rightly pointed out that when you merge into somebody, it's fascinating, that journey, because they bring a level of knowledge that you might not have experienced. But you should enjoy the time when you're in your company. You shouldn't grow it to exit from day one. Grow it to have fun and have a way of life, because agency life does take over. And if you don't enjoy it, there's no point in doing it.
How do you set expectations? Because it's tough business. You've done it. You've done deals, getting deals done. And talk to us a bit about deal fatigue.
Yeah, I guess so to the first point about setting expectations, it depends on what that expectation is. So if it's a monetary expectation, halve it. If it's a time expectation, double it. Because these deals do take twice as long as they really should do, and you'll always get half the amount you expect. So I think in terms of expectation, really manage that process. And again, the deal fatigue piece, going back to that sort of twice as long process, you will get to a point where it feels like it's dragging, it feels like it's taking too long. You'll maybe make a mistake, you maybe will lose interest. Don't. That's the point that you need to get to when you're in kind of, you're in the weeds. You need to make sure that you don't fall asleep. You don't just do the quick deal to get the deal done. You have to make sure it's right. So just take a step back. Just make sure you don't rush anything. It happens to people, but they don't realize. They'll go, yeah, fine, whatever, just get this done, get this sorted, and they'll move on. And that's sometimes not just a mistake for them, but a mistake for the business that they're selling into, because they just take their eye off the ball. The EBIT goes down, they don't care, they just sort of sell it for what they can sell it for. Make sure you focus on everything and enjoy the journey. To what Jane said, enjoy that journey. It'll take a long time, but it'll be worth it at the end.
And that's a very good point. When you talk about the length of time, it can take a lot longer than you think to do it. You can't take your eye off the ball. You've got to be almost like a pilot with a plane. You're flying the plane, but at the same stage, you're trying to manage this whole other situation, like repairing the plane going on. How do you run a business when you're doing that? And then also motivate, a younger generation of people to perform at the optimum level?
Yeah, and I think it depends at what stage your business is in terms of how you communicate that to the wider team, right? So, and again, at what point the deal is at. So if the deal is nearing completion, maybe it's time then to communicate to the wider team that something's going to happen. You're pretty sure heads of terms are going to be signed. You're pretty sure the deal will go ahead. Maybe bring the wider team on that journey, because it's all about, in agency land, as you guys know, bringing the team on that journey. It's not strong-arming them, it's making sure they're invested in it. That said, at the earlier stage of a deal, you need to bring the SLT along. So making sure that the senior leadership team, whether they've got EMI or vesting shares, whatever that might be, whether they're just generally interested in the future of the business, making sure that they're involved at the beginning piece will be crucial, because it'll emphasize to the buyer that there's actually something that's worth buying that's not just yourself. Because at the end of the day, they know that the CEO may leave in 3, 4, 5 years' time, but they want to make sure the SLT, the core business, will stay afloat and will be there fundamentally. So that's the kind of comms piece, I guess. Motivating is important. Making sure there's a future in the business and they're not just going to be merged into something and forgotten about is also key, but it's all about timing.
Okay. One last piece which I think is interesting. One thing that you've been very conscious of as you've been building your business is the role of technology, both that being involved in evolving media performance technology or technology such as AI. What do you think the importance is to owners of being able to have their own IP as part of the intrinsic value of their business?
I think it will largely depend on the scale of the company as to how much they can invest inwardly in developing their own tech. So there's a difference between owning the IP outright of technology and developing the actual kind of tech stack itself to a certain extent, versus actually just building a plug and play tech stack with lots of other SaaS products that are in the market already. One has a sort of a lower barrier to entry than the other. So it's depending on what you're wanting to do as an agency, depending on how much you can burn. I think all agencies should have some kind of tech stack built into their business. There's no two ways about it. AI technology is changing the face of agency as we know it. People's roles are becoming more diversified, where you might have had a producer, you've now got a producer that can edit. You might have had a graphic designer, you've now got an animator and a graphic designer. There is an element of people's roles becoming more hybrid in that sense as AI becomes, or as technology becomes more and more prevalent. That said, when you're coming to sale, you need to make sure you package this up in a narrative that actually makes sense. So it's not just we use X, Y, and Z, we plug it in and that's that. It's we've got a unique tech stack that supports our clients, improves efficiencies, grows EBIT and makes it more profitable. That's something interesting to a buyer. You don't have to burn lots of capital. You can do it in a plug and play way. It just depends on where you are as an agency.
Fantastic. Jane, just turning back to you, what do you think in this role going forward? What do you think success looks like if you look back 3 to 5 years' time, you look back and...
I think it would be that we've secured a number of deals and the agency owner is very happy. And that will take a number of different formats. They may stay with the company longer than their earn-out period, which would be amazing, in a new role that really excites and stimulates them. They may do the earn-out period, but we'll have helped to encourage them to enjoy that earn-out period. And I think also on the journey of the actual sale, just helping make sure that they're going at the right time. Because a lot of, there are so many barriers to actually doing a deal. You kind of wake up and you're right, I think I probably should really take this seriously now and sell the company. And then you go and see someone, I think it's worth X million. And they're like, as Ollie says, it's worth half. Yeah. It's going to take twice as long. But the point is that people, it's their baby. So they overestimate how much it's worth. But we can help them get up to that value if we take the time to help them build the right processes and systems in. And Ollie said earlier...
And the right partner.
And the right partner, exactly. But, getting their tech stack sorted, getting the figures actually looking like they make sense. Perhaps taking another year to grow the business a little bit more to reach a different level, which will impact on the sale price.
Right.
So I think it will be a mixture of you're ready to go now, you're not going to probably ever go. And let's work with you for a year or so. And when any of those deals come to fruition, it's almost like we would have an alumni of very happy agency sellers, and we track them and feel responsible for their future happiness.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy that we do already have a really good alumni of people who are there already. Ollie, if I was to ask you the same question, looking back, what do you feel that a successful stint as a board advisor and having worked with clients, what would that look like?
I think for me it will be working with fun, up-and-coming growth agencies through that merger and acquisition piece, but advising them on what it looks like for them now and what they can do in the future. Yeah, fine, they might be merging into a company at the moment. They might want to stay, but what else can they do? Do they go again? Do they start another business? I think deriving absolute value that they feel is worth the time and effort to put into it is really important. So the buyer needs to be happy, the seller needs to be happy, there needs to be that synergy in between. And there'll be a lot of rocky roads along the way. So being able to nurture and guide them along that process, as I have done by buying in agencies, we did it in a stupid way. We did it too quickly. We did it completely incorrectly. If I can at least advise one person on how not to do that if they're buying a company, for me that is a success because we've saved them a world of pain.
Okay, fantastic.
Can I just come in with another thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the really interesting thing is that most CEOs are very lonely, and particularly independent agency owners. And there are so few people you feel you can go to for help because your particular merger, your particular acquisition feels so unique to you. And they feel like there's so few resources out there that they can help and support. And I think that's a really important role that we can play, particularly because, I've made very similar mistakes to Ollie. And I think you bring that to bear. And just also, it's always, if you feel someone else has gone through what you're about to go through, it's such a reassuring position. And you have really weird thoughts when you're selling. And some of them are deeply personal about, like, what shall I do after? Others are really practical about how will I ever sit on a corporate board when I've never sat on a corporate board? So I think just someone by your side supporting you through that is really important.
And do you think that there is something unique in the idea of for owners by owners?
Yes, without question. I just don't understand how you'll know all of the challenges unless you've gone through it.
Yeah.
In fact, I would almost go as far as to say for owners that have gone through an M&A process, really, themselves, or have experienced it. Because I think that gives you a unique perspective. Because there's lots of people that run agencies that have never sold them, that may just have passed it on to the staff or whatever. So I think it is that specific experience of having gone through either a brilliantly managed merger or a disastrous merger. And either way, you can bring that to bear and let somebody gain from your disastrous mistakes. But it's about wisdom, isn't it? Obviously, we've also done some good things, so we can bring that to bear.
I think collectively, if we're true to our mission, it's to make sure that other owners get the full value of their life's work.
Absolutely. That is beautifully put. Because it is about a legacy. This is the thing, going back to what I said earlier, when you're running an agency, it's not a job. It's your entire life. You feel this sort of bizarre, right at the beginning. I could never imagine that my company would ever survive without me. Not in a kind of weird egotistical way. I just thought, oh, but then suddenly you wake up one day and realize they don't really need you anymore. And also, what's really fascinating is when you walk around the kitchen table, when we used to have those things, and the staff are talking about it with ownership. And you're like, wow, they own this now. And it's an emotional ownership. They feel it's theirs, and they create their own relationships that they take on. And one of the things I love so much about being an agency owner is they make the best friends in their careers, and they go on to do other things. And it's a living, breathing ecosystem, an agency. And I think you have to get to that point where you realize it's not all about you. And that's when you can leave and move on to something else. But a legacy is crucial.
That's a beautiful way to put it and a nice way to finish. If you'd like any more information about what we do here at Agency Futures for other agency owners, or you'd like some help with your own transaction or your own exit planning, you can have a look at our website or contact us at doug@agencyfutures.com. Thank you.